And welcome out to this episode of Tax Sale Titans, episode number 24. Happy to be with you this evening here. I'm Ferre here with Stephen Swenson. We've got some good stuff to cover tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. We enjoy doing this, and we've been doing pretty good now for a little while. And we want to be able to give our members additional training on different topics, look at upcoming auctions, give you any news that is involved in tax sale investing. And so tonight we're going to go look at some New York sold results. We're going to talk about this very 6 most important tools that we'll use as tax sale investors. And then finally, we're going to go look at some upcoming auctions or an upcoming auction here in Utah.
Yeah, you bet. Now, before we do that, first we just want to give heartfelt thanks to all of our members, either coaching members, website members, or even those that follow us on YouTube. But it's always been the people following us and the people that we've always had wonderful students, incredible students, and people that we could really relate to, people that are just trying to just need a little bit of help, with tax sale investing, just need help with a few things here. And we've always kind of felt that we've always had the best students and students that made us, pretty grateful about what we did.
Yeah. I mean, we love nothing more than to help people go out there and have success with tax sales, with real estate. And, we appreciate everyone that's following us. We appreciate our membership. And we appreciate everything that you guys do for us. So let's go ahead and talk about New York. We're going to start and talk a little bit about an Essex County sale that happened the end of last year. But before we do that, we're going to get into how New York works as a state.
Yeah, so New York is a tax deed state, meaning that the counties basically wait out the redemption period before they'll foreclose on. Now, one thing that's actually kind of interesting about New York here, I don't know if I have this listed here or not, but they actually treat their sales in Manhattan differently than they do their sales in the rest of the state. You can almost treat them like they're two separate, things in terms of how they operate, because the entire state pretty well operates like a tax deed state. But I think that that Manhattan itself operates with liens that they sell to institutional buyers.
Yeah, well, it's not just Manhattan, it's all New York City. So with New York City, they're going to offer liens, but just like Shade said, to some type of institutional buyer. Nassau County actually will generally sell theirs to the public. So besides those 2 areas, every other county in New York is going to be a tax deed sale. And what the county does is, after a period of about 21 months of being delinquent, then they can go ahead and initiate and start that judicial foreclosure process. So for most of the state, it's tax deeds, in most of the counties.
Now, one thing that is unique about New York is that of all the states in the country, they seem to be one of the only that provide us with current images of the properties and sometimes interior images as well. And so, that's something that we have enjoyed from New York properties. Whenever we can get information there, it's a little bit like Michigan. Michigan will usually take a picture of the property there in front. New York is kind of the same way, but if they have access to the property, they'll take interior images as well.
Yeah, well, that can make a huge difference in determining if you want to bid on the property. Now, they're going to use a premium bid system, essentially bid up the property in price until the high bid is established. And as far as the auctions, a lot of the auctions have moved online. And the over-the-counters, if they have any, actually end up being sold through the land banks. In fact, that's actually something we just got off with our coaching students about. Our member students was about the land banks.
Yeah. So we're going to go and check out this sale here in Essex County. When did this wrap up here?
January 21st.
Okay.
So it was a few months ago, and I'm just kind of picked out some of the properties here on this list. You can see that 15,000, 8,000, 17,000. But we're going to look at a couple of ones individually. This first one here, I really kind of like it. We had actually talked about it with the coaching students before the auction took place. It was pretty new built, and it's just your good 3-bedroom, 1-bath type home.
How much did it sell for? Oh, 63,000. Yeah, that's an awesome property. There's a lot of reasons why we love houses like this. Number one is its simplicity as a house. It's very straightforward, which is going to make it a lot easier here and cheaper for things like if it needs to be fixed up, if you need to do work on it, smaller house is typically going to be easier. But the other thing we really like about it is it's newer, built in '86. A very simple house built in '86 is new enough that it's going to have modern construction standards. So probably not going to have as many issues as if it had been built in 1926. So we love to see that as well. Other things we can see about it, the roof looks great on it, um, you know, but it probably hasn't been remodeled since '86. And so, looking at it, I mean, at least I think the windows are original there too. I don't think they've been updated. But it looks like we have some interior images of it too.
No, this is that's just a comparable because they actually wasn't able to pull it up with the comparable on there. It just had the assessed value. But obviously pretty clean. You can see here's a current photo of it where it's again pretty clean. It's on a good half-acre lot. And here's some of the county kind of records about it. One thing that is interesting, and we were talking about this earlier, is so many of these areas have comparables. So if we were looking for comparables, we could try looking at some of these, and a lot of the county records will have something like that available. I was trying to look at this, just on its own. And there was a house that was really close to it that sold, recently, but this is actually not even really a good comparable because it's about the same size, but it's a lot older house. But I just kind of wanted to show what properties were actually selling for kind of within this area.
Yeah, so certainly this property we're looking at here that was sold for 60,000 has the potential, to be valued here at 250,000 plus.
Yeah, I think really safely valued at over 200,000. Could easily be worth, like you said, $250,000 or more. So picked up for 60 grand, you can see why they were willing to pay up for it. It looks like it's still in pretty good shape.
Yeah, well, and ultimately, even if it's valued at 200,000 or 180,000, they basically got it for a third of value. And at 33% or so, that's a pretty fair percentage to pay for a property like this. It would probably make sense. I don't think they overpaid for it. I would say that within that range, you could probably pay up to 40% for this property and still have a pretty good deal on it.
Yeah. Now this one here, I'm not quite sure about, but I thought I'd throw it on there because it really could be, a good opportunity. They ended up picking it up for about 55,000. As far as the county assessed value, they picked it up for about 25 cents on the dollar as far as the assessed value. It's about 9 acres, but it's all of these different lots together. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different lots, and it's already been subdivided for a cul-de-sac. So it's possible that you could buy this and split it up into all of those lots, or create 2 or 3 big lots in there and really kind of make it an overall really profitable deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good chunk of land, quite a bit of land there, really. And it's interesting that it's already been subdivided, but it's owned by a single individual here. Yeah, we can see it's uncleared property there.
Yeah, it's kind of right here in this area. As far as looking up the county records, there's actually, a ton of different parcel numbers. So I just looked up the first one. I don't know if this structure is still there or not. But in kind of looking at the area here on even Redfin, they've went ahead and have already have all of these lots split up already. So even Redfin recognizes, these as individual lots, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, even if you were to say it was worth 250, they spend 50 grand for it, they could make 200. Even if they sold it for 200, or 150, they could still make 100 grand on it if they sold it for 150,000.
Yeah, it's an interesting property.
Yeah.
And a pretty good low percentage of value that they're paying. At least 25% on a property like that is not bad.
Yeah. We'll look at the map here quick, just to kind of show it to you. And then we'll move on to the next one.
Oh, it's interesting. So it doesn't, oh, it does include that one that goes up against the road. It looks like there's a house. Oh, you know what? That house is just outside of it. That's what it is. You see the house there, right below it to the right. Uh, yeah, to the
Right
right,
there.
right there. Yeah, that one. Yeah, I was looking at that house.
Yeah, so it's, all of these lots right here, all subdivided, ready to go. So kind of an interesting one for those that are looking at land. And the fact that Redfin is already recognizing, I thought was kind of interesting. But if you were to kind of look at each one of them, each lot is worth about 40 grand. And, you've got 9 different lots there. This is
Yeah.
just an example of a little lot that sold that was pretty close to it, that sold for 46.
Yeah. Now, some of the things one of the things you may have to do if you were trying to sell all those lots individually is you'd probably need to build a road, in there to access, because it didn't look like a road had ever been built. But if you had a road there, it would certainly make all of those lots pretty appealing, to potential buyers, because each one's like an acre lot. They're pretty good building lots, I'll bet.
Yeah, well, and you could go ahead and subdivide it yourself, or you could just go ahead and sell it to somebody that was going to do it. This one here is kind of a little bit older, but you can see that, to a degree it's been repainted. It looks like the roof is new. It ended up selling for $15,000. And some of these properties didn't pull up very well on Zillow or Redfin. You can kind of see it here. And kind of looking at the value of it, located right here. Here the value is, they did it at 135, and I wanted to see, well, what does some of the other mobile homes, now these might be a little bit better, and they very well could be, but I just want to see, well, what are the closest mobile homes selling for on their own piece of land, close to this. So these are going to be within a quarter of a mile within this location, which is pretty far because this is kind of rural area.
Yeah, I mean, so it really kind of shows you that the properties there are easily hitting 200,000 plus, in property values, even with mobile homes. So the property has the potential to actually have tremendous value.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they picked it up for 15 grand. So let's say that you just did nothing more than secure it, clean it up, maybe clean out the yard. You let somebody else rehab that. Could you sell that? Let's say you're into it 15 grand here, and let's say you even put another 15 grand into it. So you're into it 30. Could you sell it for 120,000 or 150,000 probably pretty quickly? Yeah, you probably could. So, I mean, even just securing the property and selling it as is, you picked it up for 15 grand. Could you sell it for 80 or 100 grand? Well, you probably could, and do a quick flip that way.
Yeah, I mean, really, even doubling your money on a deal like that would be worth it. If you could buy it and just turn around and sell it and double up, it would be worth it. But you could probably do better than doubling it up. And they bought it well enough that they could probably do better than that.
Yeah,
They could probably get 45,000 or 60,000 out of it if they were going to wholesale it.
yeah, I think they could do it pretty quickly. This is kind of an interesting one. I didn't have the time to really try to find comps. It would be a little bit more difficult. I'd have to probably use some of the county tools. But, this was kind of a big restaurant, and it looks like that there's actually, there's a living structure behind the property as well. Here's kind of the county information on it. You see it was built in
Effective, you're built
64.
in
Must have had a
85.
full-on rehab in 1985. Square footage. County's valuing it about 383,000.
How much did it sell for?
Oh, did I not show? 70 grand.
Wow. Wow, that they really stole that. Sitting on 2 acres there, 2,400 square feet.
Yeah, yeah. We can take a look here at the map.
Yeah, I'll bet they'll do pretty well with that.
So you can see here, here's the restaurant, here's the trailer, and maybe it's worth setting up as a restaurant again. Maybe it can be converted to something else. To me, it kind of looks like it could be. I mean, you could convert that easily to something besides a restaurant.
Yeah.
You've got the mobile home back there, or I
Yeah.
think that's a
Oh
mobile,
yeah. Yeah, metal roof on it too.
but
On the mobile home. I mean,
yeah. But for 70 grand, you could probably do something with that. And
oh
even things like, that's a big outside cooler.
yeah, they paid almost nothing for this compared. I mean, the county's estimated value there of three something for. I mean, even if you were to say the property is valued at 350,000, at 70,000, they paid such a small percentage of it. They didn't even pay 20%. They're into it. A pretty small amount.
Yeah, well, you can see, they've got still the exhaust fan set up for it. A lot of these restaurants kind of went out of business during COVID, and the company that went out of business, and that's something we always look up, is the name of this old restaurant, and then we'll also look up to see who owned it. Was it owner occupied? Were they renting it? And a lot of times we can find out a lot more about a property like this by doing a little bit of research on it and just seeing what we can find, because we might be able to find photos of the last time it was opened, photos of the interior. All of that kind of stuff is something that is probably going to be available online, because most people were posting going to the restaurant.
Yeah, yeah, it really is nice when you find commercial properties, they're always more challenging to get comps on, but they're easier to obtain additional information on because people are going to post it or it's going to be listed, and it's usually by the address. So, or by the business name here potentially. You can look it up either way.
Yeah, in fact, I didn't look it up. I'll do it quickly. Is it Emeralds?
Probably.
Yeah, Emeralds. But thought that was kind of an interesting deal. This
Yeah.
next one was picked up for 27 grand. And when I was looking at it, the roof looked good. It's had updated siding. It's obviously an older home, but there's actually a home behind it as well. So you're kind of getting two homes. They picked it up for 27,000. Here's kind of some of the county information on it. It was updated in 1965.
Is the county estimated value there of like 100,000? Is that 106,000? How close is that to market, I wonder?
They're putting it at 165,000 as
Oh,
far as the
interesting.
estimate.
Yeah, so the estimate on it is even better. Yeah, they really did really well with it there for picking it up for 25,000. I mean, they
Yeah,
paid 10% of value for it roughly, a little bit more than that, but they picked a very low percentage of value, considering it's a property that's valued more than 150,000.
yeah. Again, you could go ahead and just board it up, clean it out, change the locks, and then if you were to wholesale it for 75 or 80 grand, you could probably do that pretty quickly, double your money with the minimum amount of work. Or you could go ahead and try for going through and doing a rehab on the property. Redfin had it at only 74,000, but from everything I was looking at the market, it was closer. I think that I don't know if that's going off old county assessed value or what's going on with it, but they did have some older photos from 2022. So you can kind of see what it looked like in 2022. It obviously needs some type of update,
Yeah,
but
in pretty good condition though.
yeah, I mean, if you were to go and repaint all of those cupboards, give them a new look, obviously putting in uh, a new stove, but little interesting. In some ways, I almost wonder if it was updated since then, because I noticed some things on this from the exterior portion that were updated that wasn't updated when the photos were taken.
Yeah, well, yeah, excellent purchase though. I mean, for 25,000, you've got so many options with that. I mean, yeah, you could triple up your money here if you wanted and just get out of it. This property probably rents out for more than probably $1,200 a month or more.
Oh, I think it was closer to 1,600.
Yeah. Oh,
You
this is
know,
another nice one. Oh, this is
yeah,
so nice.
yeah, sold for 20,000. I mean, even if you were just saying it was worth 100 grand, it's pretty decent shape, little small house. Well, not too small, but pretty clean. And it's actually got a trailer next to it as well and a garage included in the back. So if you're kind of looking here, you can kind of see it behind there a little bit and see the side of it there. There's the side of the trailer. And then behind the house, you got, this this structure as well. Here you can kind of see both of them there.
Oh, wow. That actually looks like it might be livable even too.
Yeah,
It's got a
built
metal
in,
roof on it.
well, this was built in 1992.
Yeah, it's so new. In fact, it's like the very first property that we were looking at. This one is very similar to it. Really simple house, not much to it, but it's new enough, built in 92. So all modern construction practices. It has additional structures there on the property. They paid $20,000 for it. That is such a steal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's, these three right here, they don't have a street side view on it. And then, here is where in looking at it, when I was looking through the comps, they don't show the value here compared to really what it should be.
Yeah, well, it's clear. I mean, the county's estimate of 106, it's got to be at least 106,000. So for Redfin to say 69 is,
Yeah, I think Zillow. I thought I must have not clicked on the link on Zillow, but I think Zillow was like 123 on it. So there was kind of some discrepancy. And I did a quick view on it, but you're also, even though this is an older trailer that's next to it, that could still be another property to rent out. And renting out each one of these, when you pay 20 grand for it, paying 20 grand for it, you can rent this out because it's, for probably $800 to $1,000 a month, maybe a little bit more than that. It's only about 700 square feet, one bedroom, one bath. But let's say you're $800 to $1,000 on that. You rent out the trailer as well for 700. You're bringing in, $1,600, $1,700 a month of rent off of those two properties.
yeah, this property has tremendous income potential for the invested, the amount you're invested into it. I mean, for basically, you could pay yourself off within 2 years,
Yeah, in
which,
fact, I don't know if you remember this one, Shay. This was
oh,
actually
yeah.
purchased by one of our students. The market value is quite a bit higher than they show, but this was really about the condition of the property.
Yeah,
And,
that's right.
and so it's actually located right next to, kind of in a small college town within the area. And, I don't want to give too much away about it because, it's one of our students, but here you can see that he just barely put this out on the market,
Oh,
and
they
he's
did a
renting
nice
it out.
rehab on it.
Well, I think
Or
that
was it
they
already
did.
done?
I think that he did add quite a bit to it, but I was able to find some older photos of it before it sold a couple of years ago, and it looked like it was really clean inside. That was one thing that and it's the reason that he was willing to pay 45 grand for it, was really because the condition of this property, was in such good shape that you could go in there and, now he's got a rental property that he's, going to be renting out for, almost close to $2,000 a month. And, he had obviously had to put a little bit into it, but it was in such good shape, when he bought it. I mean, you can even see from here how good a shape it is.
Yeah, well, and you can also tell that, from like where it's located at, that, yeah, the features there and the environment around it is pretty nice. I mean, you can see that that is actually a nice looking rock wall that they've built there as part of the foundation for a walkout basement.
Yeah, yeah, and you've got an extra room down here. It's really kind of here in a pretty location right next to the, kind of in the lake within this area.
Well, and
You
everything's been done too. Like, you see on the outside of the property, it has railing that's been built out there and a lot of additional things that have been built. It's whoever owned it, did a good job of completing everything and giving the house a nice look.
Yeah, well, it's kind of right here within this area where you've got this small college that's close by, really nice area surrounded by lakes. So, we just want to congratulate him. That was a great deal, and it's good to see that he's going to be starting to make rental income off it. That's awesome. We'll show one more and then I'll flip it back. This one is just a cheap old trailer, but it was picked up for $6,000. So, when we have people that are talking about trying to get, some property for under 10 grand, structured property, sometimes it's going to be a trailer like this that you can pick up for $6,000, kind of looking at the value within some of these. Here's a couple that sold, that are kind of older. You may need to do a little bit, but I mean, they're not that great inside, and it's this one kind of the same year, sold close by for 106. This one's the cheapest one I could find right now for 74,000. So, picking this property up for $6,000, not too bad a deal. And, it'll probably be easy to even just turn around and flip it as is and, sell it for 25 grand, 30
Yeah.
grand.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good. I mean, if you were to put it on the market, it's the value on it. Uh, Certainly, it's not going to be worth less than 60,000. So they picked it up for about 10% of value, and even then, you could probably sell it pretty quickly here if at that kind of a price point.
Yeah, well, and it was still occupied at the time, which means that it was still livable.
Yeah.
So overall, not too bad. I'll go ahead and throw this back to you, Shade, here. There you go.
All right. Well, let's do this here. Next, let's move on to the training tip of the week here. Let's discuss 6 investor tools for property research and what we use the most. So let's talk about each one of these here briefly, just because they play an important role in where we gather information from and where we look to in order to find or obtain that information. So let's talk about each one of these here first. First, the treasurer's records. This is often, well, usually it's the person that's in charge of the sale, but oftentimes it's one of the first places we go when we're looking into accounting because we're trying to obtain a tax sale list. But what we usually end up using the treasurer's records for more than anything else is to figure out what the status is with the tax payments, which tax payments have been made, which taxes are still outstanding, so we have a better idea of what's happened here with the property in the past, and we understand the opening bid a little bit better, or we understand, what is owed on the property here a little bit better, because we can look into the records and we can see which years were paid, which years weren't paid, and we can understand where the opening bid amount is coming from if it's a deed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are the 6 tools that we use most often as tax sale investors. So the treasurer's record, the tax collector, sometimes that's going to be the place that we're going to go to get the tax sale list. But like Shade said, where this is going to be important is for tax and certificate investing to check up things like roll up. And so we will use this, to get the sale information, but really, we're not going to use it like we would the assessor records. The assessor records is really going to be the area that we're going to find out about the property. This is where we're going to be able to look into all the details in it to make a determination if it's even something that we want to research further.
Yeah, I mean, well, usually the assessment records are tied directly to tax sale lists. If they're not, though, they're really easy to find with parcel search tools, and just regular Google search is probably one of the fastest ways to do it with just some simple keywords. But the assessor records, we're primarily using to focus on all of the property attributes and then ownership information. So first, things like assessed value, the property address or its site location, zoning and use, what the property is intended for, sales history, value, and transfers here. So we look at all of those things. We're looking at how the county has the value assessed, but we're also looking historically to see, what's the last time the property sold? How much did it sell for then? Because properties don't generally go down in value, they tend to only go up in value in most places here. But it's also where we can see things like, where ownership changes have been made, when and how somebody bought the property, how much they pay in annual property taxes. All of these things are things we determine essentially through the county assessment there initially, and a lot of that's what's going to help us figure out if the property is worth looking into further or it's worth discarding or moving on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this is where we're going to make a determination. Is it worth it to continue our research? When we're looking up the assessor information, we're going to do that using the parcel number. So a tax sale list is going to have the parcel number. When we're looking up the recorder records, which we'll talk about here in a minute, then we're going to use that ownership information. This is the reason why the assessor record is kind of the #1 place we're going to go to. In addition to that, a lot of the assessor records are going to have links to their GIS map. In fact, we just noticed that when we were looking up properties there in New York, right? We were looking at the county assessor record, and we could click on that link to pull up the GIS map. This has made tag sale investing so much easier, especially if we're doing land, because there's all kinds of tools that we can use to help us learn about the land. But even something like a home, many of these GIS maps have tools that are built in that can even allow you to look up the sales information.
Yeah, the GIS systems have been incredible. They're a great way for us to be able to see the property from an overhead image and know where the property lines or boundaries are at. But Steve's right in that there are a lot of tools that are built into these systems here, like different base maps that we can use to help us see features like floodplains or topographical issues here with properties. But just the ability to see the property where it's located at and the property boundaries is a big deal. You couldn't do that 15 or 20 years ago because everybody was using plat maps. And so, the GIS have made a big difference here for us in being able to get more accurate information about the property and learn more about the property. We're able to gather more information faster as a result of what we're able to see on GIS.
Yeah, they really have been a game changer. Also another game changer is Google Maps. We're going to use a combination of both of these. And so as we're looking up that assessor record, we're going to be able to see the address or the GIS map that can help tell us the road and where this property is located. Then we're going to go ahead and connect that information and put that within the Google Maps to see not only what the overhead image looks like, but more importantly, does it have some type of street view feature? This really gives us the ability to do an on-site evaluation. When we're talking online valuation, excuse me, when we're talking about going through stage 1 due diligence and we talk about doing an online evaluation, most of the time we're going to be able to use tools within Google Maps and Google Street View to be able to see what the property looked like the last time that photo was taken or the car drove past and was able to record all that.
Yeah. In fact, Google Maps are just such a big thing here for us because we get different time periods, and that's really what if we get to see a map and know if the maps were current as of today, then it would probably only use one map. But that's just not the case. When we're looking at maps, we're usually looking at different time frames. And the one thing that Google allows us to do is it shows us different time periods here, but they're also the only service that provide street side images. And street side images are a big deal if you're trying to figure out what a property is. And street side images tend to be available for most of the most of the country. We can get some level of street side images on. It's just a matter of how old they are. But I would say that the street side images with Google Maps have also been a game changer. Certainly something that has made it a lot easier here to get an idea of what properties are. We can't rely on that for buying things like homes, because things can change so quickly, but it can give us it's a very quick way now to be able to determine what the property is here, at a glance versus, needing to try to decipher what the property is through the records rather than just being able to go to it and look at it.
Yeah, well, not only the condition of the home now, but also the condition of the neighborhood, the condition of the area. All of this information that we're gathering, essentially, we're putting together and deciding, is this going to be something that's going to continue to go down the path of research and move on to something like the recorder records? When we're talking about the recorder records, this is the department, whether it's called the recorder or the clerk or the land records division. This is going to be the department that handles the mortgages, the liens, the judgments, marriage licenses, anything like that is going to be saved within these records, within these departments. And for many years, you had to go down to the county courthouse and do all of this in person. But now the counties have put this information online. In fact, it's becoming more and more common. More often than not, we can be able to find this information and do our investor title search right there online using the recorder records.
Yeah, in fact, this is what enables us to be able to find things like liens against properties. It's also the same thing that allows us to see property deeds. So that used to be something you could only do in person there at county buildings, is in terms of like pulling up different property deeds and seeing those. We can access all of those as well. So it just makes it possible for us to do more research now, without leaving a computer. We don't have to go to the county records building anymore in order to find this information, and that is a big game changer as well. It saves us a ton of time, because it's fairly common for tax sale properties to have government issued liens against them, and the records that we can go through here are how we find those types of things like liens against the property.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, all of these are essentially, we're kind of going down the list of the way we do the 3 stages of due diligence. These are all different areas that we're going to attack through stage 1. As we get into the recorder records, we're talking about stage 2 due diligence. And, as we're going through that, we're making a determination if this is going to be something that's worth even putting more effort into, like getting an on-site evaluation. Like Shade said, when we're looking at Google Maps, we're not going to trust that online evaluation. If it's something like a home or a structured property, we're going to need to do an on-site evaluation. But if we look at that property and it's got all kinds of liens against it, well, then we're going to need to either take that into account in how much we're willing to pay for it, or we're going to avoid the property altogether. And so that's the reason why the recorder records is probably one of the most important things that we're going to need to do and research before buying or bidding on a tax deed property.
Yeah, absolutely. And here you can kind of see, so when we're trying to search for these types of records like liens against a property, we're using names. And so a lot of times what we're doing is trying to manage the results that we're pulling up. If we have a very unique name, then a lot of times we may pull up a limited number of results that are there, and our job can be pretty simple. If we have 5 results to pull up, it doesn't take very long to go through and look at those 5 results. But if we pull up 500 results, then we need to find ways that we can make that number smaller. And sometimes it's by doing things like adding middle initials, or it can also be by looking for specific record types. So rather than looking at all 500, let's see if out of those 500 records, how many liens there are in there. And we'll look at just the liens here first. We're always looking for ways to kind of reduce our workload there. And the search tools like this are a pretty good way to do it. We can always find some way to reduce it down, so we don't have too much of a workload in order to figure out if there are liens. I would say on most properties, we can figure out the status of whether or not they have liens within a matter of a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's become pretty easy. And depending on the type of title or how many owners there was or how it was transferred, maybe that we need to research more than one name. Now, kind of the final game changer is the property value websites and different tools. Once we've gone through and researched it, then we're going to do a full comparative market analysis in stage 3 due diligence to determine exactly what the value is. And the fact that we have tools like Redfin and Zillow, and even now the county records, even like we showed you before, how you could look right there when we were looking in New York, we had the ability to look at the comparable properties or the properties that sold. This is such a game changer, but because when I first started as a real estate agent in 1999, there was none of these tools available. In fact, that was kind of the advantage of being a realtor, is that if they wanted to get an idea of what their property was or value, they had to either get an appraiser or they had to look at listing it, where we would do a comparative market analysis for them, because there weren't these type of tools available.
Yeah. Well, that was in the past, you pretty much had to have a realtor for all the things that they could do and provide for you. But today, you can do many of those things on your own. I mean, even a simple tool like Zillow saves us so much time compared to what it was like 20 years ago. When you're trying to determine property value, you needed to pretty well to have an appraiser come out there and give you an appraisal on the property if you wanted to know what a property was worth. We can find comps now, or you had to have someone like a realtor that had access to the MLS that could pull up that information for you. In a way, access to Zillow is kind of like having access to the MLS. In terms of your ability to look at all the properties there, find comparables, and that's probably the best part about it is, how they use comparables for every property valuation they give, and so we can always see which properties they're using to set our value. It's a pretty transparent system that way. We know exactly how they're coming up with the numbers they're coming up with.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, all they're doing is they're pulling the values from the sold comparables and put it through their algorithm and see what the approximate value is. In fact, when we talk about stage one, we'll go ahead and check Zillow value and we'll check Redfin value and see what the difference is. But then when we go through and do a full comparative market analysis in stage three, that's where we're actually going to find the comps. We're going to put them in one of the tools like that are available within the form center, the deed calculator, to help us figure out exactly what the costs are going to be and what the value should be based on the properties that have sold right there around that similar tax deed.
Yeah, this is also something that we do. So what we're showing here with Redfin is the process we go through every time we're looking at a new market that we're unfamiliar with, and we're looking at property. We always want to get an idea of what is going on with that market and how healthy it is. And the way we can do that is by seeing how many properties they currently have, listed for sale, and how many properties have they sold in the last 12 months. And using those two numbers, we can know about how much, I guess how long the inventory that's on the market they have right now would be set up to last for. So if they sold 100 properties, last year, and they've got 100 properties on the market, then it means that they've got about a year's worth of inventory currently sitting on the market. It's kind of a slower market, not a lot of sales that happen, but there are some. A totally different story than, let's say, if there's 100 properties that are on the, they're listed, and we go and look at the sold, and we see that they sold 1,000 properties last year in that county. Well, then suddenly we realize that the 100 properties we're looking at are only a month, maybe a month and a half, 2 months worth of properties at max. So actually, it's a strong real estate market with a lot of sales and not a lot of inventory. Those are all things that add up to easy sales. If there's not as much inventory there as people demanding sales, you're definitely going to be able to get a deal there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, and in addition to having the county, there's just so much opportunity to do most of this research on our own. So these are the 6 steps that we're going to use most as tax sale investors. And, they're all going to be processes within the 3 stages of due diligence that we're going to use throughout that process.
Yeah. Now let's talk about pre-auction or upcoming sales that we're going to take a look at here. For this pre-auction, we're going to be looking at Tooele County, Utah. Now they have a sale that is scheduled here for May 7th. Let's talk for just a second here about Utah. This is our stomping ground here. So Utah is classified as a tax deed state. So all the counties here in Utah, they all sell tax deeds, and it's actually after is it 4 years or 5 years? For some reason I thought it was 5.
4 year.
For a full 4-year redemption period here. So after the redemption period expires, the county essentially forecloses on properties that are still outstanding, and then they sell the properties there for total amount owed, or at least starting at what's owed in taxes and fees. Now, in the past, actually, for a long time, Utah tax sales were almost all held on some of the same weekends. Every single year, it was like all the counties in the state would hold them on the same weekend. But fortunately, since then, a lot of counties here throughout the state have moved over to online auctions in the last couple of years. And what that's also kind of served to do, they still hold their sales in May each year, but they're spread out a little bit more over the days. So other than that, the other thing that they've changed in some places, like they used to force some of the counties, like Utah County had to do a bid down the ownership, and they have got past that. So everything's pretty well sold by premium bid now, and basically highest bidder wins. There can be over-the-counter inventory, although real estate prices here are kind of nuts, and so people tend to go a little bit crazy with the auctions as well.
Yeah, a lot of times they're going to be referred to as the auditor sale. And like Shad said, they're going to happen in May. What's kind of interesting is last year, I would say that probably 70% of the counties held online auctions, and I don't know if they're just waiting to put out the list, but I haven't seen as many online auctions come up as there was last year. But we thought it was kind of interesting. We're always trying to look at new states that we can expose you guys to and different areas so that we can teach you a little bit more about that state. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Tooele cell, and where Tooele is located is it's just located west of Salt Lake City. And so it's kind of, you know, but the area between Salt Lake City and Nevada, that's going to be kind of the Tooele County area. And so we're going to look at an upcoming auction that's actually being held on not Govies, I'm trying to think of the name, Public Surplus, which doesn't have as much competition sometimes as some of the bigger auction websites.
Yeah, that is true. All right, so it is down here, and all right, there's about 100 properties here that are currently listed here, May 7th. We're gonna click on that, and here we can see it. So yeah, bidding hasn't begun here on any of these here yet. I think they'll probably open that up a week before, so about 7 days before here. Now, let's take a look here at properties, because there's an interesting mix of properties here. The amounts, so cheapest ones here, we have some for $937 or so, or $171. Probably going to be junk land on those. We could always take a look at them though. But let's go with a couple of these here. So let's go with this one here. And one thing also that kind of works to your benefit, I think, in a way, is that the records here are not very helpful. You know, they don't really tell us a lot. In fact, what we actually end up doing is we end up grabbing the parcel number right here. We're going to copy that, and and then the other thing we can pull up here. There we go.
Yeah, sometimes they'll give you the option to log in. We're always going to look to see if there's some type of public login that we can use.
All right, there we go. So we just I plugged in that parcel number here, and it looks like it did pull up the property. Now, we can see this property is 16 acres, is what it's listed as here. Let me just enlarge that a little bit here. Let's click on it. Okay, so it has an estimated value here. They assess it at 151. So I think it is just vacant land here. And if we scroll down a little bit, we can actually see they have a street side image here of the property from, I can't tell, 2023 maybe. And then here's an overhead image of the property, and so you can see about where it's located at. Now the property, it looks like, you know, it's accessible here by a public road, and it's a pretty good sized lot. So, you know, there's probably a lot of things here that you could do potentially with a property this size in a neighborhood like this.
Yeah, in fact, one thing that makes it a little bit more difficult as well is if you were to take that parcel number and look up on the GIS website, it won't pull it up. You have to use the parcel number, see up there at the top where there's spaces between it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
If you actually wanted to see what that looks like, you know, you can look up the GIS map, but you have to use that parcel number right there to actually, you know, find it on the GIS map. I've got the link in that one section. You could probably do a search on it though.
Now let's pull over here. There we go. Oh yeah, so yeah, it's a good overhead image. And what we can see is this is land that has been it's probably been farmed up to this point.
Yeah, it's definitely farmland. Well, and look at all of the homes that have been built around it. So, and some of those homes right to the north of it, those look like new construction. So you could easily subdivide this into, you know, larger lots or, you know, I don't know, 15 lots, maybe more than that. And you've got access from all of that main road there on the left-hand side to be able to put into it. Plus, if you look down there in the south side, you can see where that one road you could connect that goes up there
Yeah, right here you could.
right there and
And
down
this
below
one,
too. Yeah, yeah. So you have, 3 different access points there that you could put in a road to be able to make it into a subdivision.
yeah. Well, and if you're doing regular size lots, it's big enough to have quite a few lots. For some reason, it doesn't seem like it's 16 acres to me. It seems like it's smaller.
You got to think those are probably 3rd-acre lots, of the homes that are in front of it. The homes in the below it, the homes in the above it are probably maybe, I don't
Yeah,
know. Those are bigger lots up there. I bet those are over half-acre lots on the north side.
yeah, probably. They're probably like 3/4 of an acre lot, something like that. Maybe half acre, but they do look to me
Yeah,
like they're bigger
yeah,
than that.
yeah. They're big lots.
Yeah, that's an interesting property in any case. And it's starting out at $37,000, but the other thing is that number that they're giving it, 150,000, is nowhere close to what this property is actually worth. This property, we would need to look and find comps for it, but it wouldn't surprise me if this property is valued at well over, or close to $1 million or more.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, just a building lot within some of those areas, just even a simple area like that could be 90 to 150 grand.
Yeah, absolutely insane. Now there are a mix of properties that are here. There's land, there are homes. Yeah, like for 15,000, this one right here. Let's pull this up, and we'll pull it up here real quickly. But some of these hoops that we have to jump through in order to find information and participate in the sale, these are all things that can help us, make money on properties like this. Make sure that there are fewer bidders. So, this one's actually it's a planned urban development here, phase 4. And we can see it is a house we're looking at here. They value it, they say 471 is the value on it. And we actually, so here's all look at all the transfers. Holy cow. Well, that's
Yeah.
actually, that's just in 2000 and, well, starting at about 96 up to 2015. But here we can see the house. Now, yeah, I thought it was newer construction than some of these dates even show. I might have to pull
Well,
this
all
property up.
I'll guarantee that those are the pieces of the land. Because if you
Oh
look right
yeah,
there at the bottom, it's still being in construction when that photo was taken.
yeah,
You can see it's still got the stuff on. So I think that these are the different land transfers of where this lot was. They're just pulling up everything.
yeah. Oh yeah, it's in 5984 Elizabeth. I had pulled this one up. And it's this property right here. You can see the subdivision that's located in, and the image here is from July of 2024. So it is a pretty new house here.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, some of these, I mean, most likely it will end up redeeming. Oh, why did that
Well,
one?
could be worth doing a pre-foreclosure on though.
Oh,
It's also where we'll look into the history of it and see, is it owner occupied? Is it owned by a corporation or a company or like an investment company?
there we go. So yeah, they can see it's valued actually above what the county was estimating there. But yeah, this was built in 2017, so it is a pretty new construction here. And I think most likely it'll just end up redeeming here right before the sale, because it's an awfully valuable property just to lose like that right before the auction. It's possible it could happen, but it's also possible people are just late with their taxes.
Yeah, well, and it's very possible that it could be a pre-foreclosure. I mean, sometimes people can't come up with 40,000, but and if it's coming up to the tax sale, a lot of times that means that they didn't have a mortgage on it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so, otherwise the mortgage company would have stepped in and paid that off before losing, all of their money in the property. And so in that kind of situation, if they can't come up with it, that could be a deal where you can go in there, buy it quickly from them. Maybe you're not getting it for 30 cents on the dollar, but a house like that, if you can get the interior information on it, you can have an inspection done because of the way that you're buying it. You buy it for 70 cents on the dollar, you can still make a ton of money on buying that as a pre-foreclosure.
Now, I do want to show you this because this is a first for me. This is the biggest property I've ever come across in a tax sale. And it's this one right here that has an opening bid of $8 million, $8,190,000 here. Let's pull this up and I'll show you because this property's crazy. All right, so I've got that copy here. Okay, now if you look at that, so this the previous owner here is the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. On acreage is 4,317 acres.
How could the owner be that is crazy, because look at that Utah Division of Forestry and Fire. How could the Utah state be losing a
Yeah,
property to the tax sale? That doesn't make any sense to me.
it does not. Well, and maybe it'll redeem and maybe it'll go to auction. I don't know, but if it does go to auction, the opening bid on it at $8 million, is about 10% of what they're estimating at. But if it's anything like everything else, that they've estimated at, that number is not, not even half of what it's valued at. It's probably valued at 200 million. So it sets the value 96 million is what it sets the value at here. But I wouldn't be surprised. It's 4,000 acres. It is a massive amount of property. Let's pull it up here too.
Well, I think you're just pulling up one of them, because if you looked at it, there was a whole lot of parcel numbers connected to it. Look at all of those below it.
Oh yeah.
It's not just one 4,000. It's not just one 4,000 acre parcel. It's
Oh yeah. You can see this one's 247 acres. That one down below it is 610. All right, that's right. Because it didn't pull up anything just now. So let me do that. There we go. Oh, interesting. So it's not quite straightforward because some of this land is underwater.
I think it's probably that whole mountain. I think all of these are connected. So
yeah, probably. So this is the one that's 610 acres right here. Let's see what part of this is. It's interesting. All right, let's see where else here.
I wonder if they're all together, or it's just different parcels all over the county.
Let's see here. We'll know here in a second. I think that's connected. This one is anyway. Now,
this is where they have, they do all kinds of different things out there.
why is that
like
road
minerals and salt and.
I think it's a dirt road. Let's see, 160 acres right here, and then 473 down below that. Yeah, these are some really big pieces of property here.
They look, that one's within the same area.
Yeah, it is. It is touching, and it looks like so. A lot of this property seems like it includes all of this stuff, all of this industrial. Oh yeah, you can see this is owned by Utah Division of Forestry, Fire and State Lands.
That's a big plant of some sort.
Yeah, it's a little bit odd here.
Yeah, this is one of the most. I don't even know the word for it. I've never seen something like this come up for tax sale before, especially being owned by the state that's being lost to a county tax sale.
Yeah, that one there, and then also
I mean, they wouldn't go to the trouble of putting that on the auction list if they weren't planning on selling it. You know, and they're asking about 10 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, there's that one. And oh, there's still so many of these things. I cannot believe this. All right, we've got that. Here's another 500 acres here. It's all around them. Yeah, they own. It's everything around this this whatever this place is.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
somewhere out
oh,
there by the Great
oh,
Salt Lake.
this is that mine that you drive past from on I-80. You know, like when you're driving out there to towards Tooele, you know, there is it looks kind of like maybe some kind of mine that's set up there on the left. I think that's what this is. Let's see. Look at that, there just are more and more of these listed here. It is humongous. 18 acres, 9 acres here, 7 acres here, 16 acres here.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Let's see, there's another 400. Let's see where this one's at.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
they're in the same area.
Well,
Let's check.
and it's not quite straightforward, you know, because a lot of this stuff, this is all like industrial land, you know, which it's not necessarily land I would want to own.
No, but it might have a huge amount of value. I mean, you know,
Oh,
it could be
I'll bet it does.
it could be worth $200 million,
Yeah, yeah,
especially if you can acquire some of that industrial stuff on it. I'm just really surprised to see it at the tax sale. That's really weird.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, interesting property there. Oh yeah, you can see actually there's the taxes right there. So they pay. That's weird. You know, the taxes in 2024 were like twice as much as the taxes in 2025.
It's probably because they weren't getting paid. You know?
Yeah, yeah, but
There's more typical tax sale properties on this list though, but that is pretty interesting.
yeah, very interesting here. Yeah, there are tons of good properties on this. You know, there's actually several. I mean, there's commercial land on here. You know, with some of these bigger ones there, I think that one's a big piece of commercial property. A couple of these are, well, 60 acres and 119 acres. You know, so if you're looking for land, they certainly have it out here. And they've also got a lot of homes. Yeah, there's
Yeah, in
quite a
fact,
few homes in this.
I was looking at just one piece of land and it wasn't even that much. It was a couple of grand and it was like 20 or 30 acres that was really kind of, it was out there kind of within the mountain area, but probably had a value of, you know, 100 grand.
Yeah, so this one's 119 acres here. And let's see here, valued at about 1.2 million is what they're estimating at here. We can see that they've got this street number there, and here's where you can see where the property is located at here roughly. Yeah, pretty interesting though. And there are also some nice new houses that are in this sale too. Um, you know, I should pull up one more here. We'll do one more house here, let's say. And let's do this one right here. So for 121 here, this one's at $3,800 is what it starts out at. So not too high. Plug that in here. And yeah, all right, so we've got, there's the actual property address, I believe. 40 North Valley View Drive, yep, that is. And then you can see the image here of the house right there. I do wish they would make it easier to write down the address, because
Yeah.
they make it difficult.
Is it on? I think it might be on the count on the list on the, if you scroll down the county, the auction list.
Oh, they have like the
Oh,
yeah,
no,
like
they
they
don't
don't
have
have
it.
it.
Yeah, they
No,
don't.
yeah, they don't even include location on that, which makes it kind of a challenge here to find.
It does give a better opportunity to try to acquire it.
Oh, look at that. I can find it.
Yeah, it's out there.
Holy cow. Yeah, that is it. That is it. It's in pretty rough shape there. You can see that it is maybe vacant at the time. I can't tell if it was
Can't tell
vacant, but
you
this is August of 2024.
what kind of value is on it. I mean, it's only starting at $3,800, so.
I don't
It's
know if
not
it's going to be
pulling
able to
up.
find it. Yeah, I don't. No, I'm not able to find it here. Sure, with enough work, we could probably find it, but it's going to be valued. Well, the county has it estimated at like 82,000.
Yeah,
But I think it's probably going to be double that like the other one, so it wouldn't surprise me if it's about 160.
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, if even in the rough shape, there could still be value in picking it up for the right price and rehabbing it, but it's definitely outside of town. Tooele has a couple of, Tooele itself, and there's a couple of a little bit larger cities or towns in there. But then there's also some areas between that and Nevada that are going to be a little bit further out like this.
Yeah, to give you an idea, so we were talking about Elko County, Nevada's holding their sale. They're just about to hold it, and it actually is right here, just on the Nevada side of the border. This is for the Utah border. We're looking at Utah here, Salt Lake's right here, and Tooele County is basically this county right here that is just to the west of it and goes all the way to the edge of the state. So it's a lot of desert area there, but there's also though, there's the city of Tooele, and there are, so if we scroll in here and kind of show you, there are cities out here, where there are people. So it's not all just desert area. There are also communities out here where you've got a lot of people that live. But this is pretty much though like this. Oh, a couple hundred miles here, between Salt Lake and Wendover. It's also where the Salt Flats is at. But most of the property though for that you're going to live in is all going to be over here on the east side of the county.
Yeah, you get a lot of people in Grantsville areas like that where people will commute from Salt Lake City because it can be 20 minutes or less to be able to get out there to kind of where those homes are at.
Yeah, this should be an interesting sell there. Yeah, it's interesting there. You can see just that $8 million property they've got there, and it shows it plus all the other opening bids there. It's about 8.6 million is the total amount here. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it means they've only got about 500,000 on the rest of them in opening bids.
Yeah. All right.
Well, it's kind of interesting. We don't get a chance to look at an auction like Utah every month because like many areas, they may only hold auctions one time a year. Some areas will give us more flexibility, like New York, where we can have auctions throughout the year, and there'll be some states like Utah, or if we're looking at tax liens like Florida or Arizona, where the sales happen one time a year.
Yeah, and Imran, you might be right. It might be a water treatment plant. It could be something like that. I mean, certainly it looks like they had. Yeah, I couldn't tell if it's mining or if it could be some kind of water treatment. Because they do have the water kind of separated there into some different ponds here or different areas. Yeah, I mean, obviously with a property like that, you'd do a lot more research here before you would dive into it. It is the biggest piece of property I've ever seen listed, in a tax sale, which is everything
Oh,
about
by
it's just a
far.
little bit weird, from the property itself, that it covers, which it looks like it's in a whole industrial city. Um, it's humongous, that way. But I would actually be a little bit concerned about environmental issues too, potentially. because, it would not surprise me, if there's some of that going on there as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an $8 million property. So just with the opening bids, we're talking about really probably a property that's definitely worth over 100 million. So you're going to be a high level investor, looking for something like that. And it's probably, I will agree with Shade, it's probably the most unique property. I mean, there's probably been tax sale properties that maybe have been more opening bid amount. I can't think of any, but definitely that's the biggest property and one of the highest opening bids that I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. It does kind of go, it very well could be. And Ron is saying that he visited a water treatment plant once, and it looked just like a giant pizza from the top, almost. Kind of slices like that, like we were looking at.
Yeah, well, and they do a lot of salt, Morton salt. They get all their salt from out there in that area. So be
Oh
interesting
yeah,
to look a little more into it.
yeah. It's not that far from the salt flats, and there is just massive amounts of salt out there. They probably do process it there. But yeah, very interesting. Well, if there's any other questions, we're happy to take those. We usually try to kind of answer questions as we go along. You guys always have good questions. Oh, I did see a question here earlier. No, I must be thinking of something different. No,
Well,
I think we've answered all the questions.
we'll be back again next week, and we appreciate everyone that joined us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. We'll be back again for the next episode here next Wednesday.
Yep. Thanks again, everyone.
All right, we'll see you then.